Amy is 40 years old, and this morning she's doing what many adults her age do, preparing to go to work.
Hi, Damon. Good.
Amy performs data entry for a transaction processing company. Will is 38 years old. Like many of his neighbors, each morning he grabs his briefcase and a mug of coffee as he leaves for work. Will provides cleaning and maintenance service for a local insurance company. Bobby is 25 years old. He works at one of the country's leading pharmaceutical companies. Bobby completes filing and data entry tasks. Each morning at one of the area's largest health clubs, 25-year-old James arrives for his job as a laundry attendant. All 4 adults were diagnosed with autism when they were young children. Their outcome is the result of years of intervention based on the principles of applied behavior analysis. Data collected over several decades document their progress in acquiring skills that prepared them for productive and fulfilling lives as adults. What were the challenges they faced and overcame? What was their incredible journey? On July 20th, 1974, Amy was born to her parents, Mel and Helen. Like any child, she was full of smiles, laughter, and she was meeting every milestone.
She liked to watch Sesame Street like all little kids, and she knew all her letters, and she was really putting things together and learning how to read at 9 months old. And here, you know, we were really proud of her. Here we have this genius of a little girl.
Will was a happy, solid kind of baby. He looked like he would just roll with anything. And I was young. I was going to school, and I was 21 when he was born. I put him in the baby sack on my tummy, and we went. We went all over the place.
We decided it was time to have a family, and around 3 months into my pregnancy, we went for an ultrasound, and much to our surprise, we found out we were having twins. Bobby was the firstborn, and he was really a big size for a twin. He was 7 pounds, 10 ounces. And they were both beautiful.
When Amy became a little bit older, let's say a year and a half, going towards 2 years old, she was not doing what some of our friends' children who were of a similar age might be doing.
Most children instinctively gravitate to and play with toys, but Amy did not have the same interest. She never played creatively with toys. She was obsessed with collecting dolls, but did not play with them as other girls did. She also had no interest in interacting with other people.
Our friend had also about a 9-month-old, and when you had them together, her little girl was more interactive, would look at us, would smile, but Amy, there was just a little quality in her eyes that it just, something was not right there.
She began to lose her smile and any expression of happiness. As Amy withdrew from others, she began to display several troubling behaviors. Her sleeping habits began to change. She would routinely wake up screaming in the middle of the night for no apparent reason. Mealtime became unmanageable. She refused to eat most foods, and her mother was concerned about her nutrition. But the most striking change in Amy was yet to come. Mel and Helen began to notice that any change in routine would cause Amy to become upset. These outbursts of crying escalated into an uncontrollable rage. Changes in routine caused Amy to become extremely upset. She had tantrums when her father drove home a different way, or when there was a minor change in plans during a family outing. Community outings became a major challenge for Mel and Helen, and soon became less frequent. They felt housebound and isolated. When he was a toddler, Will's parents became very concerned about his language development. He was not learning new words, and he stopped using the ones he had previously learned.
At first I thought, oh well, he's taking a little break in language acquisition, he'll come back to it. And then after a couple of months, no, the change was more dramatic.
The few words he did say were poorly articulated and often unintelligible.
Are you a boy or a girl?
Yes.
He did not play appropriately with toys or enjoy watching television as other children did. Mealtimes were chaotic. He purposefully dumped his milk on the floor and threw his food across the table.
Mealtime was beyond belief impossible. All children spill things on the table, on the floor occasionally. That's normal for little children. But with Will, it went so far beyond that. He would almost fling drinks across the table or drop them on the floor if he didn't want to drink them, flood other people's plates. And I suppose part of throwing it on the floor was, well, you can't give it to me now, Mom. But even more than that, I had the sense that he didn't know what he was doing.
When his parents tried to restrain him, he responded by hitting or biting them.
He was very aggressive, to the point where eventually I had to start wearing turtleneck sweaters and with long arms because of the bites being so livid.
It soon became apparent that Will's aggressive behavior was not limited to the home. Eventually, public outings for Bill and Martha became unpredictable and more stressful than they could have imagined. Something as routine as a car ride would often result in a dangerous situation for the entire family. Will had an unusual and obsessive fascination with gas stations and gas pumps. When his parents stopped at a gas station to refuel, he would try to leave the car and grab the pump handle.
And I remember one time I got him back in the car, I don't know how, and I had to get out of there quickly because he would stay in the car if I moved fast enough. So I got him in the car and I stepped on the gas and I went so fast onto a highway, and this right in front of this truck. I don't know how we stayed alive.
Every time we went out, it was stressful. It was constant. You could never figure, well, today he's going to be fine. It wasn't a question of whether he was going to act out while we were in the car. It's just a question of when.
These dangerous behaviors were extremely troubling to Bill and Martha, but their concern turned to fear when he began to exhibit a more severe and aggressive behavior. One night, loud thumping noises could be heard coming from Will's bedroom. By the time anyone could reach him, the damage had been done. In an episode of self-injury, he severely bruised himself by banging his face against the headboard of his bed. Less than 1 month later, he had a second episode of self-injury. But this time, it was much worse. By the time Will had turned 8 years of age, his aggressive and dangerous behavior culminated in what would be a major crisis for the entire family. Bill was desperate to protect Will from himself and ensure his family's safety. He had locks installed on the bedroom doors to limit Will's movement throughout the house when no one occupied the rooms. Early one morning, as they lie in bed, Martha and Bill awoke to the smell of smoke drifting under their bedroom door.
Not only had Will started a fire in the kitchen, he had locked us in the bedroom. So I literally had to break through the door and the hasp to get to the kitchen to put it out. It's that point we realized that we questioned our ability to keep him safe and ourselves and our daughter safe.
We began to see that something wasn't quite right with the boys, maybe around the age of 2. Even though they were always together, they never really seemed to interact with each other. And that was strange, especially being twins. It was almost as if they played side by side in their own little world, not aware of their twin right next to them.
Although they were twins, James and Bobby did not acknowledge each other. They did not play together or even look at each other. They also did not display the same parental attachment that is typical of children their age.
When Bobby and James were 22 months old, I had a third son, and I went into the hospital for 5 days. And I remember calling my husband, and I was concerned that they would miss me. And I asked my husband, do they notice, or do they ask for me? And he said, well, honestly, honey, I don't think they notice that you're gone.
Family members and friends noticed that James and Bobby had no interest in interacting with other people, and they shared their concern with Mary and Charlie.
I remember a babysitter that came once in a while said, your boys are so romantic, because they would gaze out the windows. They would just look and gaze. And they did. They were so cherubic. They were such beautiful babies.
But that gazing was a manifestation of autism, we would find out. At the time, we didn't realize what we were seeing.
Young children typically seek each other's attention in play situations. However, James and Bobby were unaware of each other and uninterested in other children. They spent hours engaging in repetitive behaviors such as hand flapping. Even at a young age, children engage in purposeful play such as assembling a puzzle or building with blocks. Bobby and James had no desire to play with toys. They displayed some behaviors that at first appeared to be playful in nature, but were actually repetitive actions without any purpose. These repetitive behaviors did not go unnoticed. One afternoon, Mary's friend observed and commented on Bobby's obsession with taking food cans from a pantry and stacking them on the floor.
Well, it was the fact that he just kept stacking them up, taking them down, stacking them up, taking them down, and he didn't notice anybody around him. It was like he was all by himself. He blocked everything out. There were all these kids running around, laughing, and James was just wandering around aimlessly, you know. It was very, and my friend, she knew right away. She knew.
At a time when many parents were unaware of autism, hearing the diagnosis would be a life-changing experience.
We had never heard of autism, and it was kind of shocking when we heard this one doctor said it was childhood schizophrenia.
She said she's autistic. And what we had, we never had heard of the term. She said, well, it's, schizophrenia.
Yeah, with this idea of autism was sort of a vague thing, and the person who used the word really couldn't define it all too well. so that, we
For nearly 50 years, one of the nation's foremost advocates for individuals with autism has been Roland Machold.
Autism was first diagnosed and described in the mid-1940s by a man named Kanner. He had looked at a sampling of kids and said they were just as alike as raindrops, that they were very similar in their in the various capabilities that they had. And he described them as withdrawn, non-communicative. Some of them had obsessive behaviors. He thought that the source of their difficulty was that they had refrigerator mothers and cold intellectual fathers, indifferent to the child, did not attend to the child. That proved out to be not the case. There were studies made of samplings of parents, and they turned out to have normal psychological profiles. But that was many years later. And of course, it made for tremendous discord within families. Who was at fault? Was there somebody who was guilty? And so mothers and fathers looked at each other, and grandparents might look at their own children. Here was a child who was completely different than anything that was expected of him, and somebody somewhere had to be at fault.
As decades passed, parents of autistic children educated themselves better, but the stress and guilt was inevitable. Mel found himself shutting down inside after learning of his daughter Amy's diagnosis.
This was not a transitional thing. This was going to be a lifelong thing. And of course, that was very upsetting.
It was very difficult on the marriage in the early years. We didn't know how to handle it. We're a young couple. We didn't really have a lot of worldly knowledge, and this created a huge strain.
The diagnosis was so hard, and I think I cried for a year without stopping.
To get that diagnosis of autism was devastating for us, especially because we had 2 children with autism. And then we're like, well, what are we going to do now? And what's the answer to this?
Parents' focus on their children's education became a race against the clock. Their local public schools were ill-equipped to teach children diagnosed with autism. The hope that the public system could meet their needs began to fade.
The public schools weren't really equipped to work one-on-one with the kids. They didn't have a specialized program for autism, and we knew that's what we needed.
The teachers who had a large group, couldn't devote the time to her. So, so she'd wind up after the initial high hopes of just hanging around the peripheral of the group and not really gaining much from it. And no one was approaching her problems in a systematic way.
Their search broadened to include nearby private schools, but they also proved to be inadequate. There was no systematic method for helping children with autism learn the language and social skills that they had failed to develop.
Every school that we went to left us feeling disappointed in what they had to offer, whether it would be crowded classrooms, not enough individualized attention, chaotic environments. So there was something about all of these schools that we felt was not what we were looking for.
Navigating through the endless methods that promise to cure and searching for schools specializing in the treatment of autism consumed parents in the 1970s and 80s. But many parents would soon discover that years earlier, 2 people whom they had never met had already laid the groundwork for what would eventually give hope to thousands of parents of autistic children. Roland and Pamela were not just advocates for the treatment for autism, they were the parents of a child with autism many years earlier. As a young couple back in the early 60s, Roland and Pamela fell in love and soon married. In 1965, they gave birth to their first child, Rolly Jr. Like many newborn children, their son appeared to be happy and had no difficulty learning.
With the realization that we had a child who was classified as autistic, we began to look for solutions, as many as we could. The first thing we did was just simply love him as much as we could, around the clock. We hugged him, kissed him, we tried to play with him, we attended to him, but to little effect. Everywhere we turned, we found that we were being treated and not the child. This was disturbing because the child was the one who needed treatment. At least we thought so. One of the troubling parts was there was never any accountability. They couldn't say this is what he was like at the beginning and this is what he is now. They would simply tell you anecdotally, we think the child is doing better. But we could see very little change, if any. So we were tremendously frustrated.
There was an incredible vacuum in this field because autism was just being diagnosed and it was just coming into play.
What that is.
We had nowhere to go to investigate all these myriad therapies that were going on. So it was anyone's game. Anybody could play the game. So that's one reason we did play it. And there were a lot of parents that were desperate, and we had no schools. And for us, it wasn't a question of moving to find a school because there were none that we knew about. There was no central place to go and find out, have they published, is there data, we didn't have anywhere to go until 1975.
In 1975, Roland and Pamela met Doctors Patricia Kranz and Lynn McClanahan, two individuals who would make tremendous advancements in the treatment of autism. Only 5 years earlier, Pamela and her mother, Peg Pauline, decided to start their own school for children with autism in Princeton, New Jersey.
Suddenly, I could go to them, my mother could go to them, somebody on the street could go to them, and get answers.
Under the leadership of Doctors McClanahan and Kranz, PCDI gained international recognition for its pioneering work in research and intervention for individuals with autism.
James? What letter? Good answer. Bobby? What did James say?
Since the early years of PCDI, Ed Fensky has provided intervention for children and adults diagnosed with autism.
What we know about autism, that just exposure to typical children, to typical learning situations, is not enough. Most of our students have typical siblings that they're with 24/7, and that exposure has not taught them language skills. That exposure has not taught them how to play. They need specialized intervention and treatment.
Throughout his 40 years of service, he continues to provide training to staff and parents.
Okay, Dylan's graph. Emily, what kind There's an assumption that placement in public school is inherently beneficial for a child with autism. There's a move called inclusion that basically says that people with disabilities have a right to be in regular classrooms and be exposed to the regular curriculum. Certainly they have that right. But the question is it right? Are they going to learn in that situation? Few public schools in the United States today are able to provide the intensive behavioral intervention that children with autism need in order to succeed.
PCDI's teaching is founded on the science-based method known as applied behavior analysis.
Applied behavior analysis is the science of human behavior. It's a science that asks us to look at both antecedents to behavior and consequences of behavior.
Greg McDuff has authored numerous published research studies on autism intervention. He is now the executive director of Princeton Child Development Institute in New Jersey.
What's changed over the last 30 to 40 years is the technology. So our science is much improved. In the 2000s, we know better how to shape behavior that allows people to be independent and to participate in all types of community settings.
What was it these parents saw that inspired them so much?
We saw children who were attending, who had eye contact, who were with an instructor who was one-on-one.
It was a quiet environment, children working. We didn't see a lot of self-stimulatory behavior that wasn't being addressed, like in the other schools?
How they would collect data, how they would have enough teachers so that they could interact with the students they served. And we were very impressed that this fit the profile that we were looking for.
We saw children sitting at their desks, answering questions, doing work, and getting little tokens on their chart. But everything seemed calm, peaceful, and productive. And we were told that was applied behavioral analysis.
And we're like, oh my God, how do we get them in there? How, this is the place, this is it. And it was an hour and a half from where we lived. We had to move. But I remember calling Ed Fensky repeatedly and begging him, just take one, even if you just take one. Because we knew that it was a place where they would learn and progress and have the best opportunity.
At the age of 3, Bobby was accepted into PCDI's education program. On that same date, his brother James was also accepted.
When they were accepted, it was like winning the lottery. It was the most wonderful, joyful news that we heard.
Amy enrolled in PCDI's education program when she was 7 years old.
She was accepted in the program, and one of the early things was that we as parents were invited to come in and observe how the teaching actually took place with Amy and the other students.
Also at the age of 7, Will was accepted into PCDI's school program. But because his parents feared for his safety and were concerned about the danger he posed to others, they knew he also needed to be placed in PCDI's group home, where he would receive round-the-clock supervision and instruction from a highly trained professional staff. It was a difficult decision that some parents of autistic children may have to consider.
Definitely the saddest day of our lives was the day we sent Will to a group home. It was a painful decision, but it wasn't a difficult decision. We saw the results PCDI was getting. Emotionally, you lose a son. You know, he was gone from our lives. This wasn't the empty nest syndrome of a kid who had lived a, normal life and moved on his own. This was giving up your 7-year-old to trust in people to make him better.
One of the first areas addressed at PCDI is the teaching of attending. Attending is the ability of people to observe those around them. It is a fundamental component missing in children with autism. Yet, observing is important to how we learn and imitate behavior that is appropriate. In order for a child to imitate others, he or she must develop eye contact. This is one of the first areas of concern in applied behavior analysis.
We say they don't make eye contact, meaning they don't look at the instructor, they don't look at the parent. Now, that is not to say that people with autism don't attend at all, because for a child with autism that's interested in spinning objects, they attend very intently to that object that they're spinning. If they're a child with autism whose stereotypy is gazing at lights, they attend very closely to the light, but they're not attending to things that we consider relevant. And that means that they're really at a disadvantage for learning new skills.
Amy, Will, Bobby, and James each exhibited this common deficit. They seldom looked at their parents or teachers, and when in the same room, they seemed to be unaware of the adult's presence. Eye contact occurs naturally in typically developed children because they have an inherent interest in other people.
Eric?
However, children with autism need additional motivation to attend to others. Procedures based on positive reinforcement are used to teach children to attend to adults.
Nice. Here you go. Drop.
One of the first goals when teaching parents to help their child learn is to require eye contact before each activity. When a child comes into the kitchen in the morning, instead of just giving them breakfast, parents are taught to wait for their child to look and then put their plate on the table. If the child wants a drink, wait until he looks at them and then give them the drink. Although they were twins, lived in the same house, and saw each other every day, James and Bobby routinely ignored each other and showed no interest in playing together. They were not only disinterested in each other, but also did not acknowledge their younger brother Andrew. Video taken at their intake to PCDI clearly displayed the lack of attending reported by their parents. Even when a variety of new toys was presented, they showed no desire in playing together or even acknowledging one another.
Bobby, James,
The first step in addressing their lack of social awareness was to teach James and Bobby to listen to each other. They were rewarded with a bite-sized snack for correct answers. The next step was to teach them to acknowledge other children. Their reward system was also modified over time to teach them to attend to others for longer durations.
What's her first name?
Holly.
Eventually, home videos captured one of the first moments Bobby began paying attention to James. As brief as it was a positive sign. Unlike typically developed children, those with autism do not initiate play or leisure activities. Rather than play with toys on a shelf next to them, they instead engage in repetitive, or what is known as stereotypic behavior.
People with autism who engage in stereotypic behavior do so because we haven't taught them appropriate alternatives.
An activity schedule is a tool that can motivate and guide children with autism to learn to play. An activity schedule consists of a set of pictures or words that cue someone to initiate and complete a sequence of activities. Numerous published research studies demonstrate that an activity schedule, a teaching procedure based on the principles of applied behavior analysis, is a successful method for increasing independence. Initially, a teacher manually prompts a child to refer to the schedule. The instructions guide the child to obtain the play and leisure materials and complete that particular activity. These manual prompts are gradually faded until the child can complete the tasks without any adult assistance. The child earns tokens as he or she completes each step successfully. As a reward for independently following the schedule, the child can exchange the earned tokens for a reward. The advent of these activity schedules were tested and developed with Bobby and James. Their parents were able to use these schedules at home to help their sons learn to independently complete daily routines. For example, James and Bobby would follow a schedule to put their lunch bags away when they would come home from school. The schedules directed them to take an interest in their toys, and as schedule methods were tested with them, they eventually began to play independently. When he lived in the group home, Will learned to follow a schedule to make his bed each morning and keep his room organized. Schedules cued him to attend to his appearance by brushing his hair and choosing clothes to wear. He became independent in following schedules to complete personal hygiene tasks, such as brushing his teeth and washing his hands and face.
You're a good boy.
Yeah, well.
Children with autism do not value attention and praise from their parents and teachers, as typically developed children would.
Was quiet. Yes. I did my schedule. Yes. Yay! You got all yeses.
Peer acceptance is not important to them, and they don't feel pride in their accomplishments. They need external motivation. Designing an effective motivational system is a critically important component in an ABA-based program. Initially, children are rewarded for each appropriate behavior with a bite-sized snack or favorite activity. While this rich schedule of reinforcement helps children attend to instruction, it creates only very brief opportunities for learning, and it requires one-on-one instruction from teachers. A token system is an effective method for teaching children with autism to attend to learning activities for longer periods. Teachers reward children for appropriate behavior with tokens.
Perfect! I got all my tokens.
When a predetermined number of tokens is earned, the child exchanges them for a preferred object or activity he feels is fun, such as blowing bubbles. Another method for delaying rewards and helping children participate in activities of greater duration is a behavioral contract. A behavioral contract is an agreement between a child and a teacher or parent which specifies the behaviors the child is expected to display and the reward that is available if the child fulfills the terms of the contract.
Hey Andy, you did great shopping today. Yes, let's go over contract. Okay. Were you responsible?
Yes.
Yes. Were you friendly?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Community outings like shopping are often extremely difficult for parents of children with autism. Some children may tantrum because of this change in routine. Many parents of children with autism find that a behavioral contract is an effective method for teaching and rewarding appropriate behavior when they need to go out into the community. When teachers and parents pair verbal praise with delivery of snacks, activities, tokens, or contracts, the child begins to value attention from others as typical children do. The goal is to teach children to value adult praise.
Wow, I love how you found the fruit.
Amy learned that rewards and praise from teachers were only available when she attended to instruction. Because she was now attending, she was able to acquire a variety of new skills.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. Glad to hear it. Amy, what is this?
This is a contract.
Whose contract?
Ed's contract. Amy's contract.
Initially, her academic instruction was provided in one-to-one sessions. After a token reward system was implemented, she was able to participate in small group instruction. Her motivational system was also helpful in addressing her eating problems.
She changed her whole eating habits. She would eat, I think after that, we started to introduce new foods and she ate everything.
It was a real breakthrough, and it used applied behavior techniques and rewarding her for when she tasted a vegetable that she'd never eaten before. And it showed us that applied behavior analysis is a real lifesaver in situations like this.
Eventually, teachers would work with parents to develop new reward systems for the home. At first, the objective was to encourage Bobby and James to take an interest in small, productive projects.
Would you like to help me hammer nails? Yes. Hold the handle, hit the nail.
As they received rewards, they began learning a variety of new skills. Now they had alternatives to meaningless, repetitive behaviors. They were now more independent, and they contributed to family activities and to their own care.
They were talking, using language, starting to acquire skills, and it was really a wonderful thing because it seemed like it opened a lot of doors for them, and their progress really started to take off at that point.
Their instruction included leisure skill activities and emphasized their individual talents and interests. Bobby liked music and became a very proficient pianist. His dexterity on the keyboard generalized to the computer. James' talent for drawing was especially exciting for his father, Charlie. Charlie is a professional illustrator with a career that spans more than 30 years. He has created thousands of illustrations for ad agencies and publishers and is currently working on a book about raising children with autism. PCDI staff designed teaching procedures that use James' art skills as a basis for social interaction. He learned to show and talk to other people about his art project.
Thanks for showing it to me.
You're welcome.
He later learned to approach and interact with family about a variety of topics.
I'm making apple juice.
When they learned how to play a video game or look at a book or do a puzzle or Those are all leisure activities that keep them busy and also engaged and happy, and it keeps them from doing repetitive, unwanted stereotypies.
Autism is characterized by extreme delays in language and social skills. People with autism do not initiate or participate in interaction with others. Strategies that are intended to address this skill deficit must supply both the content for conversation and an incentive to interact with others.
Okay, Max, teach Philip.
Typically developed children and adults will usually communicate with those around them.
We would do that with each other, with our significant other. We wouldn't just leave the house and disappear for a while, but we might say something to our spouse about, I'm going shopping, is there something you need? Or let them know when you're going to be back. And so people with autism are not likely to make those ongoing comments and to engage in conversation during meals unless we have systems in place, scientific, empirical-based systems that have been demonstrated to be effective in teaching those kinds of language skills.
One science-based procedure that has been documented to help people with autism engage in conversation is a method known as script fading. Scripts are written or recorded models for interaction. "23-year-old Max has autism. He has learned several skills, such as playing the piano and working on a computer. He also likes to cook. However, he does not talk to family members, classmates, or teachers about these or other topics as most people would. This is addressed in several ways. With the written scripts, a set of index cards with various topics serve to start the conversation. For example, Max likes to visit restaurants each weekend with his parents.
I like to go to restaurants.
Last weekend I went to TGI Fridays.
I went to my stories.
The teacher responds to Max in a typical conversational manner. He also injects other things about the topic of interest. During the conversation, the teacher that is speaking to the child holds a small clipboard with coins attached to it. He rewards Max for reading the scripts and for making eye contact by placing the coins on the Velcro dots. When all the dots are filled with coins, Max exchanges them for a favorite activity or snack. The goal is to increase the frequency, duration, and variety of conversation. Therefore, teachers systematically fade the scripts by gradually deleting words from the end. Young children and those who are not fluent readers use auditory scripts that have been recorded on cards. They insert cards individually into the card reader and repeat the recorded script.
Ernie is a boy.
Ernie is a boy.
Many published research studies have found that when the scripts have been completely faded, people with autism continue to interact with others about a variety of topics. These script card readers proved very helpful to James and Bobby when they were at home.
That snack was really good. That snack was really good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, buddy.
The skills Will, Amy, James, and Bobby acquired as older adolescents were instrumental in preparing them for adulthood. Will benefited from the 24/7 instruction he received from staff at PCDI's school and group home programs. His new skills gave him an alternative to meaningless stereotypic behavior. His proficiency in following written schedules helped him complete daily activities, like making his bed and keeping his room organized without direct adult supervision. Lengthy daily hygiene tasks were broken down into individual steps. He also used activity schedules to help with household chores when he visited his parents' home on weekends. He learned a variety of age-appropriate leisure activities. While it is not uncommon for young children to be resistant to eating a variety of foods and displaying appropriate table manners, these problems are often much more severe and persistent for people with autism.
By the time Will was 10 years old, mealtime was incredibly improved. We were able to have a calm, simple, happy meal without food and drink flying across the table. We did this by, again, following the teachings of our home therapist from the Institute, who showed us how to reward Will for appropriate behavior. In other words, sitting still in the chair might be the first step, okay? He would be rewarded for that, and so of course, he would want to do that again, to get another reward. And then, you know, how to put a napkin on his lap, and when he mastered that, how to pick up the fork nicely, and how to put it in and take his food out and chew it nicely, and then take another bite. And it was all behavior that was shaped. In other words, each little approximation of the correct behavior was rewarded.
People with autism are unlikely to attend to and interact with other people during typical social situations. If this isolated and self-absorbed behavior is not addressed, they will not benefit from exposure to typical social role models. Teachers provided Amy with written conversational scripts to help her initiate and participate in conversation with other people.
Believe that we're in a store. You may believe that we're in a store buying things in Stacy's class. Well, Amy, great, wonderful. Thanks for telling me about your day. Oh, you're welcome. Okay.
By age 14, Amy's conversational scripts were faded, and her interaction with other people became more natural and spontaneous.
What did you do this weekend? I went to two picnic parties. Did you? At Jenny's and Sylvia's. Wow.
By age 16, she had learned to converse about a variety of topics with several different conversational partners.
How was bowling?
Bowling was great. My score was an 87.
87?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's really good.
Thank you.
But what about the tantrums that plagued Amy for so many years? As Amy grew older and teachers observed her becoming agitated, they would prompt her to follow an opt-out procedure. With the opt-out procedure, Amy learned to excuse herself to a private area for a few moments when she felt overwhelmed. Leaving the room momentarily allowed her to regain her composure. She was also taught and rewarded for responding appropriately to the disappointment of schedule changes. Amy learned to try new foods. She learned to cook during one-to-one teaching sessions. Initially, teachers prompted her to follow each step of the written recipes. These prompts were gradually faded until she was able to follow the recipe without adult assistance.
Hello there, Mom. Hi, Abe. How was your day?
After a while, applied behavior analysis began to show us some dramatic changes in Amy, and it was a real breakthrough. Applied behavior analysis is a real lifesaver in situations like this.
And after that, we started to institute how to teach her to cook at home as she got older, of course, and do laundry and do chores. And they would start to introduce other programs for us to teach her that we didn't even think about, you know, and that was the nice part.
Soon after they started at PCDI, we did see positive changes in the boys. They were talking, using language, starting to acquire skills. It opened a lot of doors for them, and their progress really started to take off at that point.
Several behavioral teaching procedures helped Bobby and James develop individual and cooperative play skills. They even began attending to and interacting with each other. They learned to independently complete a variety of self-care and personal hygiene tasks. When they reached their teens, their teachers began to emphasize personal responsibility.
Mom, let's look at your contract.
Okay. On my watch.
Hey, that's great. You wore your watch. You can keep your appointments.
I have my wallet.
Good. I'm glad you brought your wallet. We'll go to the store today.
Thank you.
They were acquiring skills their parents never dreamed were possible.
They were looking when you called their name. They were able to say some 2-word, 3-word sentences. It unlocked all this possibility.
In recent years, public education has been charged with being accountable for student learning. While these assessments are relatively new for most educational approaches, it has been the very essence of applied behavior analysis. PCDI has collected data on students like Bobby for many years.
The data that we collect are objective measures of students' performance. And having those data is particularly important because it enables us to assess have they acquired this skill under a variety of situations, and then it enables us to decide what can we teach next. In the absence of those data, I think that professionals that are providing intervention services are making their best guess about what they should teach and whether or not it's been mastered. If we use a medical analogy, if you go to your doctor, you periodically have lab tests so that the doctor knows that your medication is effective. If you're trying to lose weight, you weigh yourself so that you have some measure about whether you're actually being successful in losing weight. The data that we collect on learning language skills, on learning play and leisure skills, on decreasing problem behavior serves the same function. It gives us information about whether our intervention is effective, whether we're being successful in teaching new skills and decreasing problem behavior.
During adolescence, instruction for Bobby, James, Will, and Amy emphasized the skills they would need to prepare them for adulthood. Data collected for these programs documented their progress in becoming more independent. Teaching included instruction in leisure skills that matched their individual interests, and data on these skills was charted to assess their progress. Data on their display of appropriate social and communication skills enabled instructors to revise teaching procedures as needed to ensure they continued to progress.
Collecting data and graphing how progress is going forward turned out to be key to helping Amy. The program used a scientific method which was based on what would work and eliminating things that didn't work. It was different than the other programs that the preschool or public school had provided us. They showed us charts and statistics where her inappropriate behavior was being reduced and where appropriate skills were being learned.
And with the graph, you could see what was working, you know, how she improved each week, each month, and how negative things were being eliminated.
Every question was recorded, was graphed, data was kept on everything, and if it wasn't on a chart, it didn't happen. And we just saw that it was happening. It was happening, you know, for all of the children there. There wasn't wild carrying on and screaming and hollering.
Points in the learning had to be put on a graph and shown, so no one could say this child is deeply distressed and can't learn, that's why he's not getting what we're teaching. Instead, they could see by the data, okay, seems to do well here, not well here. It's not the child, it's the teaching that has to be refined until the child can learn. This was revolutionary thinking.
One of the strengths of PCDI's program is the data-based aspect, where you can use the data to demonstrate progress. And that was also a component of the home programming, was to show us how to collect data so that we could measure the boys' progress here on programs that we were doing. And in the absence of data collection, you really don't have any way to show progress. So that was another thing that was very important for us.
What I noticed was how effective it was. We weren't having any progress otherwise. Whatever we were doing, which was teaching them the way every other child learned, it had no effect. But applied behavioral analysis, even though it was so different, it worked, especially when they found what was motivating, what motivated that child, and you would use it, and they would learn.
Teaching procedures based on the principles of applied behavior analysis have been remarkably successful in preparing adults with autism for gainful employment. If it is anticipated that an adult may work in an office environment, he may be taught filing skills. PCDI starts by having them sort files alphabetically and then learn to put them into a drawer or retrieve them. This allows adults to obtain the job that is right for their abilities. If an adult is having difficulty on the job, additional teaching can take place back at the institute to reinforce their value to their employer. Dressing appropriately for a job is also an important skill. This is part of the ABA curriculum at PCDI. As a result, the adults select their clothes each day for work, and they take great pride in this. Historically, few adults with autism have been gainfully employed and self-supporting. PCDI, however, has had great success in its supported employment program by matching individual skills and interests with jobs in local businesses. Amy became very skilled at entering data on a computer keyboard. Her teachers were impressed with her speed and accuracy. By age 18, she had learned to operate an office copy machine, and she was practicing going on job interviews.
Hi, Damon. Good.
Today, Amy is successfully using the skills she has been taught to do what many thought was impossible for an adult with autism: earn a paycheck. First Data is one of the country's leading payment processing services. Each day, Amy and her coworkers process merchant payments from businesses such as supermarkets and retail chains. The job requires absolute accuracy and attention to detail. Amy's supervisor at First Data is Crystal Bryant.
Amy's very good at her job because we are in a production environment and they're responsible for keying a certain amount of items or numerical information. Although Amy's quick, she's very accurate. Amy's our top performer here. She's been here for 5 years. She really fits in. She's a team player.
Although Amy works unassisted each day, a PCDI life skills coach is available to provide instruction and assistance when needed.
Like other employees at First Data, Amy has breaks, and she has a lunch break. And often the life skills coach is present with her during her lunch time.
Hi, Marissa. Hi, Amy. How are you? Good. How are you?
This is the time, certainly, that she eats her lunch, but we also use it as a period of instruction.
After eating her lunch, Amy reviews her behavioral contract cards with the life skills coach. The contract serves as a reminder for Amy to display certain socially acceptable behaviors that are important in a community work setting.
Would you like to go over my contract?
Sure.
Today I chewed with my lips closed.
Yes, you did.
I chewed my food appropriately.
I like that you chewed nice and neatly.
And then I took appropriate bites.
The life skills coach awards her points for each behavior displayed. Amy enters these points on her iPhone. Accumulated points are exchanged for a reward of her choice.
The things that Amy enjoys doing that she may exchange points for are sometimes shopping trips. She likes to go to the mall and window shop. And so it may be something as simple as that. But these are activities that Amy enjoys, and she knows that the way that she gets access to those activities is by satisfying the requirements of this contract, the agreement, and accumulating enough points to do that.
4 decades of helping adults with autism become productive employees at community worksite has identified skills that are critically important for their success. Methods for these teaching skills have been added to PCDI's curriculum so that new generations of students can benefit from this experience and knowledge. Preparation for adulthood includes completing assigned tasks alongside peers without constant supervision and reinforcement. After one task is completed, children learn to start the next activity. Potential employment skills are identified and developed. Students learn to attend to their physical appearance in preparation for the workday. Independent completion of self-care and daily living skills like vacuuming opens new residential options.
Will is a great example of a young man who taught us early on the type of work that he wanted to do. By the time Will was 16, Will was proficient on computers. he was typing about 65 words per minute, and everyone was convinced that Will was going to go and work in corporate America. At age 18, we presented him with activity schedules that allowed him to choose his work, and he reliably chose manual labor. Our first impression was, this poor, confused lad. He doesn't understand. So we actually paid him more to do white-collar corporate work, and he still chose manual labor. Had we put Will in a jacket and tie and sent him off to corporate America, he would have been miserable, and he would have told us about his misery by being disruptive. Will chose this job. Will likes his job. And on occasion, we continue to give him other options. Would you like to try this or this? And thus far, Will is happy where he is, and he tells us no when we offer him those kinds of opportunities.
During his school years, Will learned to follow activity schedules without direct adult supervision. This skill was invaluable to him as he entered the workforce. This level of independence was once thought to be impossible. Will is responsible for keeping various office-level restrooms stocked and cleaned. He uses his cell phone to log his location at various times of the day so life coaches can track his activities when they are off-site. He soon mastered the routine cleaning tasks and was very thorough. He quickly learned to check the operation of soap dispensers and inspect, note, and record any faulty door hardware. After completing his assigned work tasks, he submits the checklist to his supervisor. PCDI's adult work program prides itself on making certain employers are happy with an adult's performance. They encourage employers to alert them to any areas where improvement is needed. Will was proficient at cleaning and maintaining the restrooms, but his supervisor expressed a concern to his PCDI life coach. Before entering restrooms, Will was taught to knock on the door and announce his entry for the benefit of anyone using the facilities. Will's supervisor at Princeton Insurance is Tucker Hoyt.
One thing we found with Will was that he was a little reticent at first. He wasn't knocking very loudly, wasn't speaking very loudly, and sometimes he was knocking and just going in without giving them a moment to respond.
PCDI life coaches developed an application on his cell phone that walked him through a step-by-step sequence of tasks before entering the room. After knocking the first time, he is prompted to announce support services.
Support services.
Support services.
The application then instructs him to wait for several seconds for a response from any occupant. He is then prompted to knock again before propping the door open to begin his cleaning tasks. Life coaches occasionally occupy the restroom to teach Will how to react when someone is inside.
The coaches have done an excellent job with him. They've trained him, they've come up with devices to help Will remember to do what he has to do, and they've taught him to speak loud enough. They've come up with ways for him to time how long he's waiting to give people an opportunity to respond. And they've been able to come up with fixes for any issues that have come up.
In addition to the regular cleaning tasks, Will's supervisor asked if he could also complete other tasks on a weekly basis.
Monday, room trash from classroom room.
You should match learners' skills and interests to the job, not the other way around. You don't put them into a job and then try to teach them to like it. I think that'll fail more times than it succeeds.
Will has a job, a real job, and he makes money, and he loves it. When I ask him who's his boss at work, he'll tell me and he'll get a big smile on his face, you know, and it's wonderful. I'm very proud of him.
On weekdays at one of New Jersey's largest pharmaceutical companies, Bobby swipes his employee identification card as he arrives for work.
Hi, Michael.
Bobby works as an administrative consultant. He completes data processing, document copying, and collating tasks. When Bobby was 5 years of age, he began learning to use a computer keyboard. His typing speed astounded his teachers, and today this skill has made him a very valuable employee. He is also extremely accurate and meticulous as he completes his daily assignments. Bobby is also responsible for maintaining databases and updating information on the company's server. When Bobby was a teenager, his teachers at PCDI taught him to be responsible for completing daily homework assignments and bringing personal items to school each day. This valuable skill was to play a significant role in preparing him for employment.
Hey, Brett.
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I'm great. Do you have any scanning for me?
Sure do. Could you scan these and make sure you get these 3 things?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
His school instruction included learning to operate various pieces of office equipment and completing assignments from PCDI's administrative staff. This training proved valuable in Bobby's work at Sanofi.
How's your work going? Great.
PCDI life coaches periodically check in with Bobby to review his performance and provide any additional instruction that may be needed.
I love that you're doing the work on here and on here. That looks fantastic.
Thanks.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
I just wanted to stop by so we could go over Bob's schedule.
Of course.
Life coaches also meet with Bobby's supervisor to ensure her satisfaction with his performance and exchange information about his work schedule. Today, Bobby is a valued employee. His skills and talents not only enable him to earn a paycheck, but also contribute to the organization's mission. This outcome is the result of early preparation through instruction based on the principles of applied behavior analysis. Each morning at one of the area's largest health clubs, James, along with his coworker Neil, arrives for his job as a laundry attendant. James' employer is owner and manager Michael Breiler.
When you come into our facility, you'll be able to see all of our staff displayed on a wall. We work as a team, there's no levels, and that just gives a feeling of unity amongst our staff, that everybody's there for one purpose.
Each year, over 30,000 towels are provided to customers. Providing clean towels throughout each area of the facility is required on a daily basis. If this one component does not occur in a timely manner for their customers, it reflects on the entire team and the level of quality they strive to meet. Throughout the day, James and his co-workers are responsible for operating industrial washing and drying machines. After the towels are washed and dried, James folds each one, stacks them, and places them in a plastic bag for distribution throughout the facility. James records the number of bags of towels he has completed on his cell phone. Life coaches review this information with him at the end of the workday. Not long after James was hired, his employer became concerned about his work performance and approached PCDI staff regarding this issue.
At one point, we were approached by James's employer, who was concerned that he was not folding towels as quickly as his co-workers. And as the employer would do with any employee, he first reduced the amount of pay James was receiving for his work. He then reduced his hours.
Rather than remove James from his job and find a new position for him, PCDI took a proactive approach. They asked the employer if they could borrow a set of towels. On James' day off, they assessed his work rate at PCDI. Had he reached his limit, or could he be more productive? PCDI staff set work rate goals and rewarded him for meeting those goals. The data collected on his performance showed that he was indeed capable of working at a competitive rate. In a very short time, James was back at work, reaching the benchmark required by his employer.
James is now back at full pay and working a full number of hours, and I'm happy to tell you that he outproduces or outfolds non-disabled people who hold that same position.
In this economic times, we're always looking at productivity, and unfortunately, we have to view everything by what's the yield or what's the productivity. And James was not fulfilling that, so we really appreciated the PCDI training him to bring him back in to meet the product standards of a typical employee. It's also a pleasure working with James, and James is always welcoming smile. I always walk back there on a bad day just to see it, and they never complain. They're just positive people, and I have other staff members that'll go in the back and talk to them, which is a positive morale booster for everybody.
What we can say about the outcome for individuals with autism is that it varies. There's a range of outcomes. Some will be able to live in supervised apartments, and that means that they can live in an apartment without constant 24/7 supervision from professional staff. And so the outcomes are varied, but there is the potential for working independently and living semi-independently.
What would you like with your burger, Will?
Several years after he entered PCDI's education program and group home, Will had acquired the skills necessary for semi-independent living. Today, Will shares an apartment with his roommate Eric, who also has autism. They both share responsibility for the daily activities required to maintain their apartment. They've learned to set the table, prepare their meal, and clean up afterwards. But their learning is ongoing. PCDI life coaches continue to identify and teach new skills that promote increased independence. Eric often initiates conversation with other people, but Will rarely begins an interaction, and his responses to other people typically consist of only 1 or 2 words.
Did you know we had a good time at Ed's pool party?
Ed's pool party is fun.
Because individuals with autism have significant deficits in language and social skills, there are often long periods of silence when they are together.
What's missing perhaps from their language is the social components, and so they may not use hand gestures or facial expressions to help communicate. If you're talking to another person, you read their emotions. You read their facial expressions. If they smile, they perhaps agree with what you're saying. If they have a frowned look, they disagree with what you're saying. If they have a perplexed look, they don't understand what you're saying. People with autism are not likely to respond to these emotions and vary what they're saying in order to help the perplexed person understand what they're saying. And so that's the social component of communication that is often missing in an individual with autism.
Life coaches collect data on Will's interaction skills in order to track his progress.
One of the areas that we've seen Will really showing good improvement in is his articulation of phrases, not only single words.
They regularly review these data with their supervisor and revise teaching procedures as needed in order to promote continued progress. Some people with autism, like Will, have an articulation disorder, making it difficult for other people to understand them during conversation. Clearer articulation is addressed through his language instruction. Research conducted at PCDI and published in professional journals demonstrates that written and recorded scripts help people with autism engage in conversation with others. Life coaches listen to Will as he practices reading his scripts. They score the accuracy of his responses and provide additional teaching on reading and articulation when needed. Will's conversational topics relate to his favorite activities. The scripts are conversational starters.
Please read. I would swim happy reading if I could.
Nice reading, Will.
Because speaking and oral reading are difficult for Will, life coaches deliver frequent praise and rewards.
Please read. I usually order a burger, fries, and a Dr. Pepper.
Will, that was beautiful saying usually. Nice reading.
Thank you. Eric. One of my favorite things to do, go out to eat.
You like to go out to eat?
On the border.
I like to go on the border.
And have burritos.
Throughout the week, Will uses his scripts to interact with his roommate when they eat together.
Fridays.
Will, who once threw and dumped his food, now likes to cook. He learned to cook his favorite foods by following written instructions. A life coach provides teaching and assistance when he begins learning to follow a new recipe. His recipes include dishes like fettuccine alfredo. First, he gathers the ingredients. A life coach helps him select the proper utensils and follow each step of the written instructions. Data are collected on the number of steps he completes without assistance. These data are regularly reviewed to assess his performance and identify any errors or omissions. When Will masters one skill, another skill is identified and taught to him. The goal is to increase his independence. He has learned to do his own laundry and fold and put away his clothes. He and his roommate share chores to keep their apartment clean and organized. For leisure, Will enjoys playing on his computer and emailing his friends.
Hope they win and make it to the playoffs.
But the thing Will has learned that he enjoys most is taking walks around his apartment complex and talking with his friend and roommate. After living most of her life under the care of her parents, Amy is now living semi-independently in her own apartment. Amy does her own laundry and ironing. She keeps her apartment organized and clean. She has learned computer skills that have enabled her to send emails and pay her bills. The organization skills Amy has been taught have given her another level of independence, and she can now keep track of her utility bills and see to it they're paid each month. Life coaches regularly meet with their supervisor to review her data and revise or add new teaching programs.
So the report on Amy this week is that she's had a really great week. She's done really well with responding appropriately to schedule changes.
That's good to hear.
Accepting schedule changes has always been a challenge for Amy. Today, her PCDI life coaches continue to monitor this behavior. When life coaches visit her at her job, they review her reaction to any changes in routine imposed by her employer. The data document whether the contract is effective in helping her to be more accepting of schedule changes. Teaching procedures based on the principles of applied behavior analysis have also helped Amy become more independent in her apartment.
The last time we actually did this, before we shortened the answers, Amy
The systems that have brought Amy to this level are the result of decades of research, data collection, and data analysis.
Good. I want to look back to
Today, her intervention is ongoing. Staff members continue to review Amy's data, modify existing programs, and identify and teach new skills that empower Amy to be more independent. But living outcomes are different for each adult with autism. Some are able to remain at home with their parents, as is the case with Bobby and James. Instruction during Bobby's school years included age-appropriate leisure activities. He learned to play the piano. The skills he has acquired are the result of many years of systematic instruction and reinforcement through ABA-based teaching procedures. James demonstrated an interest and talent for drawing. PCDI staff worked together with his father, a professional artist, to develop his art skills. James has created greeting cards that have been commercially marketed. James and Bobby now acknowledge each other. Each morning before going to work, they have breakfast together. Bobby sets the table for both of them, and James pours their juice.
Thanks, James. What's up, glass?
While their social interaction is still quite limited, they are beginning to attend to and talk to each other.
What are you doing at work today? I'm folding towels of Peak painting since 2010.
While they continue to live at home with their parents, they contribute to the care and maintenance of the home. They've also learned to enjoy and interact with their family, and most importantly, each other.
40 years ago, if you had a child with autism who was unable to continue to live with you in your own home, the only option available was to live in an institution. If you had entered one of these institutions, what you would have seen is people sitting in a day room with no meaningful activities and no supervision. And I can tell you that each and every one of the adults that we serve, if they had not come to PCDI or a program like PCDI, I have no doubt they would be in a large residential facility. They would be in chemical restraint and they would be in physical restraint. I have no doubt of that. That's how bleak an outcome. They would have no life.
Parents are faced with the reality that my child is not in school anymore. My child is age 21. Where will he or she live? Where will he or she work? What happens when I'm too old to care for my child? And these are very serious questions that we're helping folks address.
Because it's a spectrum disorder, and some people are more afflicted by the disability than others, those outcomes will also fall along a continuum. There are other options at this point for adults with autism, where they live. There are group homes. There are supervised apartments. There are other options where they work. And these are the result of advancements in the ABA technology and our ability to teach people community living skills and home living skills. Not everyone becomes 100% independent. I wish we had the technology to accomplish that. We don't yet, but everyone can learn new skills. Everyone gets better. Each year, they acquire new skills. Their repertoires are expanded. They become more independent.
Will still has autism. He continues to experience the limitations of his language and social skill deficits. But today, as an adult, he lives in his own apartment. He has a job, and he has friends. This is an outcome his parents never thought was possible when he was first diagnosed.
Mom, and Dad, please come in.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, buddy.
Thank you, Dad. Meat chicken, fetching a feather.
Oh, that looks good. When Martha and I visit Will's apartment, we know what to expect. The place is going to be immaculate. Everything is going to be at its place. The laundry is going to be done. Everything is neat and dusted because now he's Mr. Responsibility. He's a great worker. He's a great son. He's a great family member. And we owe that to PCDI and ABA.
If it were not for applied behavior analysis, I don't know where Will would be today. I can only imagine that he'd be living a life of restraint somehow, of chemical or even physical restraint. Today, Will's ability to live in his own apartment with his apartment mate is beyond our dreams. I never thought Will would have that opportunity. He has a wide array of things that he likes to do, and he enjoys his job, and he loves his apartment. Will loves his life, against all odds.
Today, Amy enjoys a full and balanced life. She is a very productive and valued employee, and she has a wide range of interests and leisure activities. She enjoys cooking and planning her own meals. And she enjoys the friendships of other PCDI adult learners who live in her apartment complex. The joy that Amy feels from living independently is equaled only by the joy felt by her parents.
She seems very happy in her apartment. And taking her home after a home visit She's very happy to go back. You know, she's not sad at all.
If you think back about the early years and the middle years before she got to this point, it's an amazing transition because she's really an independent person. Except for driving, she could actually do everything that anyone else can do. I would say that Amy has achieved the status she has now, which is able to work in the community, able to go food shopping, able to cook her own meals, able to keep her own house, as really reaching the American dream for a child that has disability. Collecting data and graphing how progress is going forward turned out to be a key to helping children like Amy. And if we had not got her in that program, she would not be the person she is today.
I'm very proud of her. She's come a long way, and the nice part about Amy is she's always learning. They've taught her everything she needs to know, and they're always there for us. If we have a problem, we know we can count on them, and the staff has been great all along the way. We've had many teachers. I don't think she'd be where she is today without them, and we're grateful.
Bobby and James were once withdrawn. They isolated themselves from other people, including their parents and each other. They spent their time engaged in repetitive and meaningless behavior. Today, as adults, they have learned skills that bring them enjoyment. They now acknowledge each other and share common interests.
Without the benefit of applied behavioral analysis, the boys wouldn't have acquired the skills to be appropriate in the workplace and to do their jobs. And it's very important for them to blend in, act like everybody else, not engage in any behaviors or make noises or do anything that's going to attract attention and detract from their ability to actually perform their job. If you don't teach them from an early age about cause and effect and the consequences of behavior, if you're not strong enough to stand up to them and let them know what the parameters are, they'll continue engaging in this undesirable behavior. So sometimes it's hard for the parent to be firm and to withhold things. And it's almost like a punishment. But unless you're strong like that and you can be contingent and consistent across settings, you might as well forget it because you're not helping your child.
And the more times that they practice inappropriate behavior, the more ingrained it becomes and the more difficult it becomes to treat it and to extinguish it. One day, probably when they were between 10 and 12, I don't remember, but it really was kind of an epiphany where I realized that while we had so much to teach them, they had far greater to teach us. And they've been our greatest teachers. And to know them is to love them, and they really are the light of our life.
Amy, James, Will, and Bobby have learned a lot, but they've taught us a lot too. We've learned about how to help adults acquire new skills, how to help them be productively employed, how to help them be independent livers in apartment complexes. And we'll continue to learn a lot from the adults that we're working with. We'll use that information to do a better job of preparing adults in the future to be productive adults.
Age has absolutely nothing to do with learning new skills. I'm in my 6th decade of life and I learn new things every day, and I think we should have the same expectation for adults with autism. The only question should be, how do we teach it, not can we teach it? Of course we can teach it. We have to be creative. We have to expand the technology. So the question to me would be, how are we going to teach it, not can we teach it?
Thanks for bringing in the groceries, Roll.
Now our son Rolly is entering his 50s. He's in a group home, but he comes home on weekends.
And there are simple things that we do and do with great pleasure, and he enjoys as well. He still has limited speech, but he has very positive behaviors. We've eliminated almost all the negative behaviors, and we enjoy having him home, and he loves coming home here. So we consider him a great success, and we contribute that to PCDI and to the ABA program.
If you have enough money, you could spend the rest of your life reading these inspirational books, going to Japan, going to any country that has what they call the cure. But as you experience these therapies, you're looking for outcomes, you're looking for evidence, you're looking for data. If there is data and accountability, let's see it. Let's look at it. You want to change his behaviors, get him or her to fulfill their potential.
That documentation is very important because it's only by looking at it in the large numbers that are involved that you can determine what is working and what isn't. It's a little bit like a musician practicing the same passages over and over again in order to get it just right. And that's what ABA does.
It's a long, long journey till I know where I'm supposed to be. It's a long, long journey, and I don't know if I can believe when shadows fall and block my eyes. I am lost and know that I must hide. It's a long, long journey till I find my way home to you. Many days I've spent drifting on through empty shores, wondering what's my purpose, wondering how to make me strong. I know I will falter, I know I will cry, I know you'll be standing by my side. It's a long, long journey, and I need to be close to you. Sometimes it feels no one understands.